So hi everyone, as you've all heard, we have some technical difficulties on our videos, so we do not have any currently. At home though, you can go to YouTube and go to the 3 Happy Cats page where all of our videos are there ready for you to just upload. So there's many different extraction forms that you can use. One of the first ones we were going to show you in a video is butane extraction. At our dispensary, we currently hold not only BHO extraction, but we also have CO2 extraction and solventless extraction, which is quite an important one. Having no solvent at all is very safe. Unlike using a solvent, you have the opportunity to have chemicals and other foreign things in the air that could cause fire or explosion. So with doing BHO, you're going to need a tube like this. It has an open end at one side and a very small little hole at the other. What you want to do is also get a clamp that will hold around the top, another like a sock or a stocking that can go over the piece like this. So you'll place it over top and put the clamp on like that once you're ready to go. So grind up all of your weed, place it inside the container, place your stocking over top and the clamp. You're going to need butane, but you need other food safe or medical grade butane. You have to kind of read the back of the label, make sure there's no toxins in there that are not safe for human consumption. You're also going to need a Pyrex dish and a small container that you can heat up water in, normally like a pot or a frying pan. You want just a thin layer of water inside that, so then have it ready to go for when you do your extraction. So you're going to want to place the butane container in here, but you can't use your bare hands. It's going to get very cold. So cold that your hands will freeze to it. Most of you probably don't know that experience with the cold pole, but we certainly do in Canada. It gets so darn cold. Corey, you know about the cold pole. Yeah, all of your skin and everything will stick to it and it will not come off. It's a very painful experience, so make sure you're wearing a glove or have some sort of towel to hold the container when you do this. Also, you don't want to be smoking. You don't want to have anything lit. The butane is very flammable. You could harm yourself. I know, go figure, right? So you'll have the glove or the container on, you'll have your Pyrex dish out, your little water container boiling. You'll place the butane inside, and you're going to keep going. You're normally going to need 3 or 4 containers for something this big, and you're going to want to make sure it's nice and tight, full of weed, don't have it too loose. And keep going until all of this nice kind of creamy texture comes out. That is the THC in its purest form. You'll then get rid of this container, place it to the side, and take care of it once it's warmed up. You're going to slightly mix the stuff that's on top of the Pyrex container, and then you're going to place it inside the boiling pot. You don't want it too hot, but just enough that the water is warm. And you're going to continue doing this for about 20 minutes until all of the little bubbles have stopped forming and popping in the container. Then you want to leave it on a shelf to allow it to have all of the chemicals come out of the product. So it's going to kind of bubble one last time, the butane will escape, and within 24 hours you have a perfect BHO extraction. Most people like to use this on tea nails or inside vaporizing pens, or they like to mix it in with their joints and make them very strong. So as we all know, there is a difference between sativa and indica. Some people here don't seem to necessarily have one or the other. It's kind of like a free-for-all, I've noticed, when you buy weed here. But one will give you definitely a different effect than the other. Some people would prefer one or the other, so we tend to make one of sativa as well as indica for our patients. This is hard without a video. Oh, thanks. So I guess the next one we'll go over would be capsules. Capsules are very handy for those that can't smoke or have issues with inhaling anything. So normally what you want to do is get either hemp oil, which I'm not sure is necessarily available here just because you have issues with getting hemp seed, or you can use olive oil, which is very easy to find. So you're going to want to use one of those regular, I guess you call it a canter or like a jam container. They're normally about 1 liter. You want to fill it halfway with oil, and then you want to jam it full of weed. You're going to close the container, and you're going to put it inside an oven that's been preheated at 250 degrees. You're going to let it cook for about 1.5 hours. Let it cool down. Once the container has cooled down enough that you can handle it, open it up, and you're going to use a strainer. You're going to place all of the weed, the oil, everything right into the strainer, and make sure you really squish out all of those buds so you can get all of the nice medicine inside to the capsules. And then you're going to end up with this really interesting oil, which you can use either as a tincture. You can also use it as a topical cream at that point as well. It's oil and THC base. Or you can then take it in and put it into capsules. Normally we use 00 capsules, which is the largest capsule you can get. We buy a non-gelatin base so that our vegetarian friends are happy. And then we just use a small dropper, and we fill them and cap them by hand, and eventually we end up with a couple thousand with a container that large. Does anybody have any questions about making these things, or should we wait till the end?
Was that 250 degrees C or F?
That is 250 degrees Celsius. No. You're right, it's Fahrenheit. It is Fahrenheit, absolutely. You don't want it to get too hot, though, because you end up cooking the THC. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if any of you guys do have internet access here, but all of these videos are on YouTube, and you can certainly see all of our products that we have available for our patients at the website that you see below. We also offer topical creams that are made with like actual lotion infused with THC. Normally what we do is we create the cream. You can use like a base cream, any cream that you even have at the store. And we use this oil that we've just infused to make capsules and other devices, and we pour it inside the cream, whip them up, and use those as well. But we have like our own brand of cream. It's called MJ Creams that Dana Larson has created. They're pretty good. They have a variety of 5 different kinds. We don't personally make them, but our friend Cookie, the hemp cookie god back in Vancouver, makes those for us, and he also does infused honey. Honey is a really good one. That is something I do also myself. With the BHO extraction, the stuff you made from here, if you wanted to do honey, you would buy a container of honey or produce your own, depending on how hippie you want to go with it. But you would mildly heat the honey, just mildly though, because you can burn it, enough that you can mix this BHO inside it. Normally you want to infuse a 250 milliliter container with about 3 grams of butter. With that said, that may be too strong for some of you. For me, that is a really good dose. I have seen them as low as 1 gram in a honey container. It takes about 30 minutes to slowly mix this BHO butter into the honey. And then you would pour it into a separate container, and if you wanted to can it from there, if you know anything about canning, you just pop the lid on, put it in a boiling container, and it will seal in about 5 minutes. All right. Some other extraction methods are something called rosin, and that's a really popular one in Vancouver right now. It's done through a a hair straightener or a t-shirt press. And I've never actually owned a hair straightener until recently, and I had my youngest employee come in and say, check this out, it's pretty cool. And you just take a small bud and a piece of parchment paper, place the bud inside the parchment paper, close it up, just like a piece of paper, and you put the bud into the hair straightener and press for about 7 seconds, just as if you're like doing your hair. And you're done, and you open up the packet, and you end up with this perfect solventless oil that surrounds the flattened bud. The rosin chips you can then break up, put them into food. You could also recycle them and turn them into capsules as well, as opposed to using bud. The rosin is really good because there's no chance of there being any residue left of the solvent, because there is none. It is a little bit more tedious because it takes, especially if you're using a hair straightener, you're doing 1 bud at a time. But if it's for personal use, of course, you don't need that much. And, it's something you could do every day. Just make a couple buds of rosin every day, and that would do you well for the day for sure. Another extraction process, which is a little bit more dangerous, is CO2. I've never seen anyone do it for personal use, but I'm sure it could be done for personal use. CO2 is normally found in 2 formats, in its dry state, where you see it kind of creating a vapor, and then there's in its vaporized state, which you can find canisters. I've actually taken a look around to see what's available. It seems that only Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne are the only main cities where it's available in a vapor in a canister. You can get a soda streamer, though, which would be really interesting to try. That's a CO2 device that helps carbonate pop and juice that you're making at home. But the idea is similar to this, where you're shooting the CO2 directly in the container, and it's pouring out the bottom, and it's the same process where you're slightly heating it and allowing it to do its thing on the dish, and 24 hours it's ready to go. Some other great extraction processes that aren't necessarily for eating is dry sifting, and that's where you grind down your weed and you have a large, I want to say almost like a screen you would have for your window, but you buy a medical grade version, or you clean down an actual window screen very, very well. You take the weed and you literally just rub your hand on it, and you keep going until such times as all the crystals have fallen into the bottom and you have this really nice powdery looking substance. It's mostly crystal and a little bit of the plant. That dry sift is really great to smoke. You're getting a lot less of the plant in your lungs, and that's, for medical purposes, you really want to have less plant matter in your body and more of the actual medicine. Another great extraction process is water extraction, which can be done with bubble bags, Bubble Now, or done by hand. I have seen people use a drill to do it by hand before, which was very entertaining, but I don't necessarily recommend trying that. Oh goodness, that was good. Normally you start off with a series of different grades of bags. The smallest package is normally 3 bags. They go as high as 8. Bubble Now is a really good producer of those. There are also other cheaper alternatives as well. You're going to be needing ice as well as a lot of water. Trying to explain this without a Bubble Now. So you would also need a large bucket as well, I guess. So you would want to grind up the pot like we do in all the other processes here. You have the bags layered. We'll just go with a 3-layered bag process. So you have the 3 bags, you have the bucket, you place the weed in the very top grade, and then you place the water inside and the ice on top, and the bags go in. Some people use like a very big spoon, or some people will use a drill bit, which I don't recommend, and you would need to spin the pot and the ice and the water for quite some time until you start seeing the color of the water not being so clear. You would pull out the first bag, and then you end up with this kind of gritty kind of grade. And then you keep going up until eventually all the bags are pulled, and you end up with different varieties of hash at different grades. The thinner stuff being the best for bubble hash. Normally it turns out to be a full melt, pretty good product. And then of course, as you go down in the grades, you'll get lesser and less quality, but it's still an extract nonetheless, so it'll be stronger than just smoking a joint. So you guys don't really have dispensaries here, do you? Just kind of have a free-for-all in the street and hope for the best? Does anyone know? Yeah, free-for-all? So I guess you guys don't really have access to somebody necessarily selling tinctures, pills, and all these things. It's kind of hard to discover, I guess, what you need, depending on your ailment. Will also depend on what is best for you. Psoriasis and skin problems tend to react well with internal medication as well as external. We have patients that suffer from extreme skin conditions and find that using not only the CBD but the THC as well is beneficial. And I'm seeing a lot of argument over the raw plant, over the THC and the CBD, and I kind of feel that all aspects of the plant are certainly quite important when it comes to skin conditions. I really, really wish we had our video. Topically, you would probably want to treat something like that 3 times a day. That seems to be the most consistent, as well as using, say, capsules in conjunction with that. When it comes to issues of the lungs, smoking pot is probably the most problematic thing to be doing. A lot of people think medicine, smoking pot, this is a great idea. Not necessarily. In those conditions, we need to be more sensitive to the fact that they can't be smoking, and definitely offer them other alternatives like eating it, placing it on their skin. In Canada right now, we have 2 different versions of medical grade marijuana. And we have something called Sativax, which is actually the plant ground up with the THC in it. And then we also have something called Sesament, which is something that we can't make. This is made in a laboratory. I don't know if you guys can see this. Yeah, they're little red and white pills full of synthesized THCs. I dropped one. Oh, you want to see it? Yeah. I hear in Australia a lot of people confusing what's synthesized and...
The label?
Yeah, absolutely. And the difference between medical and synthesized. So there really is no difference. Just the synthetic weed that's being sold here in stores is a chemical that's not meant for any kind of medical use. It's a farce and should not be ingested whatsoever. This, on the other hand, is something that is very good. It definitely helps cancer patients as well as people with extreme nausea. Canada recently did a small kind of practice study with medical marijuana and anorexic patients, and they used Sesame and Sativax and managed to bring them to a point where they were cured of their illness and they were able to eat and function as normal human beings. I certainly think that marijuana can cure some things, but not necessarily all. We definitely hear the fight on, does cannabis cure cancer? Some people would argue that it does, and some people would argue that it doesn't. A lot of the recent tests that are being presented are unfortunately not accredited properly. If you speak to any of the doctors here, they also experience quack registry of certain projects that are launched and what are you doing? Okay, certain projects that are launched as well as medical studies that are launched within Canada and the United States. A lot of times people will quote studies where they mention in vitro studies, and that is a huge one that people get confused because in vitro means that onions can kill cancer in vitro. Same with flowers, anything as well as marijuana. It doesn't matter what it is in vitro, you can concentrate anything to kill cancer, but it would kill the human cells as well, or the living tissue, and kill the person if you were to use that strictly, especially in that fashion. So on that note, my thoughts on medical marijuana and curing cancer are certainly, I don't think it does, but I do believe that in conjunction of chemotherapy, that these tools will get you through it. Most people, when they leave chemotherapy, are in a horrible state, and none of the drugs out there that they provide, except for the Sesame and the marijuana, get them through it. In most cases, they're very unhappy with their appearance and how they feel and what they've been through, and the pot uplifts them enough to be able to get through it and go on, which is really great. In the case of epilepsy, yes, cannabis doesn't cure it, but it certainly prevents it if you use it on a regular basis. So I guess in a way that is a cure if it stops it dead in its tracks, but normally when I hear the word cure, I associate that with it no longer happens. That's it, it's over, you will never experience it again, and in most cases we're having to use these products to be able to get through life until the end. The start of these pills were from people who were making their own pills at home. And people cried out basically that we need some way of using this without smoking the flower. And this is what was brought to us. Actually, the very first thing that was brought to us was Marinol. And Marinol was very, very strong. It's a little brown pill. To be quite honest with you, if you're a recreational user of marijuana, you would quite enjoy that. It got you epically stoned. It was really good, and the government, after doing some studies, realized that a lot of people were absolutely hooked on the amazing feeling they had, and they changed the recipe to Sesame, and that is the only pill form that we have available now in Canada. And then we have Sativax, which I had mentioned before, which is the ground-up plant available in a tincture, which is quite amazing that we've gone that far. Here, you guys launched a $9 million program, but only to 25 patients. I don't really think that's a broad enough study to be able to decide if marijuana is a good thing or not, especially on a medical level. They did, however, choose candidates that were very sick, those with AIDS, cancer, epilepsy, MS, things that pot immediately makes transformations in people over. So at least they chose the right people, just not enough people. It's very interesting to come here all the way from Canada and see, 10 years ago or 11 years ago back at home, and to, see everybody gathering together to, get the police off their back. And it's kind of surreal, watching sniffer dogs and police walk by and, going through people's purses and stuff with not much consent. We're not used to that anymore. I mean, we smoke joints walking down the street, in front of police stations, at protests. I've even gone as far as using a vaporizer on an airplane, going from Vancouver to Toronto. To a protest, nonetheless, which was quite fun. So I posted a bunch of pictures on Facebook, and sure enough, upon my return, they said that there was no vaporizing in the airplane. But that's okay. I think if I did that here, I would probably be arrested instead of being told not to do that again. I definitely see a lot of promise here, though. There's a lot of people that have come here, a lot of people interested in medical marijuana as well as recreational marijuana. I'm seeing a lot of faces that are, in the right age to be here. We're in Canada, we get a large mix of ages, and it's kind of hard to do our presentations when there's so many young kids, trying to enjoy it as well. I guess I should talk more about some tinctures and extracts. There's just so many. I guess we could do some cookie recipes with the oil extraction, or I guess coconut oil. That's a pretty good one. I quite enjoy coconut oil because it is a really good topical as well as something you can ingest. It's a great product. So that's done with just a bucket of coconut oil. You buy generic. I normally buy organic or vegan coconut oil. And then you're going to need a whole bunch of other butane butter, or you're going to need wheat, so actual buds. And the two processes how you can do it is you either heat up the coconut oil and mix in the butter. Depending on the size of your coconut oil will depend on how much you want to put inside it. And if you want to do it the other way with the buds as opposed to making the butane butter, you can actually place the weed right inside the coconut oil, but you're going to have to bake it for 2.5 hours, and then do the same process where you squish out the buds and allow all of that nice medicine to kind of sink into the oil. And then the buds, you can either cook them, eat them, throw them away. They're mostly just plant matter at that point. We actually use coconut oil quite a bit at our dispensary. We have a variety of different capsules as well as topicals and other great products that we have to be able to use THC with. I also like it for my hair. It gets really tangly. I'm always at the beach. Make a mess of my hair for sure. With the topicals, like I'd said before, they're also great when you have joint pain, especially if you get one with a high CBD. CBDs tend to help with inflammation quite a bit. And I'm a bit of a skeptic. I've spoke briefly in Las Vegas at TAM last year. So I tend to look at things and go, well, I don't know, I better test it first. But I started using a high CBD cream on my elbows and can attest that it actually works quite well. We did some testing with an HPLC machine, which is high chromatography liquid machine. It allows you to be able to see the different aspects of the pot, where your THC levels are at, where your tar levels are at, and where your plant matter levels are at. You can fraction the product up to 100 times, allow you to get multiple parts of the plant in different kind of test tubes. To be fair, I'm not really science inclined. I just kind of participated in this just to see where our pot kind of stood up and where it went. And the coconut oil and the CBD is really good. You can actually see the different readings on the document that prints out once this machine is ran. Your product takes a very small amount too. It was like, I think 10 mils is what it took to test the coconut oil. And sure enough, it all came out, and it does have enough properties in it to help with reducing inflammation, which was really great to find out that it wasn't just in my head, it was actually working. Funny enough, placebo medicine is very powerful. And when you believe in something enough, it certainly can help. A lot of people get really sad when they hear the terminology placebo drugs, but it has worked for generations. Being able to just believe enough and you can get better is a huge factor in getting better. But we've had a lot of people in Vancouver trying to sell people pseudoscience, and it's been kind of sad that they're putting this false hope into certain products when they should be just laying out the facts and providing what it truly is doing for them as a medicine. We've done some research that's been, of course, not necessarily accredited, but just for curiosity's sake. And a lot of the products do hold proper claim to what they're saying, just not necessarily in the level that's being claimed, which for me seems really great because I kind of had some doubts about certain stuff and how it worked. Another one that really interested me was with the digestion. Health Canada launched a program where this particular product was put to the test, the synthesized marijuana, and they had people use Gravol versus the Sesame, and then they had people take placebos. And in some cases, the placebos made people not feel nauseous. Strangely enough, the power of belief cured them of their ailment. Some cases, the Gravol worked better. Problem with Gravol, though, is it is a chemical. And I mean, water's a chemical as well, but it's a series of chemicals that are actually very bad for you. They cause you to hallucinate. It's definitely not something from nature. So I kind of have a hard time with the concept of taking Gravol, let alone prescribing it to somebody. But it did help some of the people. In all of the cases where they took the Sesame, they all felt better. It was the only one out of the 3 categories where everybody felt good after, which I found interesting as well, because that meant the cannabis worked 100% of the time versus the placebo and the Gravol. In some cases, the Gravol made people feel really sick. And of course, in the placebo section, we got people that felt really sick as well because they didn't get any actual medicine, which was to be expected. These tests, of course, like I said, are not accredited, and it would be really nice if we were able to put some serious time into these studies and actually consider, countrywide studies where we can actually go, okay, this is what our medicine does, this is the proof in it. But with 25 people, wow, 25 people for a study. I think we put 100 people up to the test for our recreational medical marijuana experiment that we did in, I think that was 1997. Yeah, we put 100 people up to the test for recreational marijuana, and they all felt great and had a good time, and we ignored the studies, which was quite interesting. So we spent millions of dollars to see if marijuana would cause any harm, and found that it had 0 harm. And the next government came in and said, we're dismissing all that. So science is good to a certain extent, but then if the wrong people come into power, they can just turn a blind eye to it, and it doesn't really matter. The last study that we were kind of playing around with we're not doing any accredited stuff, like I said before. We bought an ultrasound machine, which is, I don't know what we were thinking. Hey, let's buy an ultrasound machine. That sounds really fun. And so I put a couple people to the test with juicing versus water, so a placebo, and then using dried flower that had been ground down into a drinkable matter. And we had a couple people from each party try the placebo, try the juicing, and then also try the dried flower. And I actually found that when they did the juicing as well with the dried flower, it created a coating on the stomach. Or of course water, the placebo would create no coating whatsoever. It's water. It's just going to flush anything out, if anything. And it was interesting to see that all of those that were having the stomach problems, once they took this juicing in, or they took in the dried flower in an edible form, created a nice coating, making them feel comfortable and making them feel good. People with IBS, stomach problems, that's good hope that this medicine is doing the right thing and what it should be doing. But then, I'm not a doctor, I don't really know what I was looking at, but I could see for sure that it left a really nice, thick coating on their stomach lining, and they were feeling much better. With the juicing, actually, that's an interesting extraction method, and very easy. You're literally taking fresh plant, and you're just juicing it like you would orange juice, apple juice, whatever it is that you're going after. Cannabis doesn't necessarily have the best taste, though, when you're juicing it, so a lot of people will mix it with different fruits and vegetables, maybe some sweetener, kind of make it taste good. It's certainly beneficial, though. It's helping a lot of people. I'm not sure exactly how much, because Canada's not willing to put any proper money behind funding for research. But they're finding they're getting up, they're feeling better, their joints are good. But I suspect it's because there's high CBD in the fresh plant. You're not getting a lot of THC yet because the plant hasn't gone to that point in its life yet. With the dried flower, it's definitely got to that stage. So you're getting a lot of THC. So I'm interested to know if the THC is actually not only helping with the inflammation because it's working in conjunction with the CBD in the plant, or if it's just getting you stoned enough that you just don't notice that it hurts anymore. Which brings me to an interesting point. A lot of people talk about painkillers, and let's be fair, there's no such thing as a painkiller. There's pain distraction. Kind of you take something, kind of go somewhere else for a little bit, and you don't really notice that background noise or pain is still there. I personally moved on to medical marijuana versus what I was having before, because opiates are really hard on your joints. And that's what it was for. I have arthritis. I was also born with my feet pointing backwards. So I wasn't able to walk until I was 12 years old without some sort of assistance or a wheelchair. Over a period of 12 years, they pushed the curve through my ankles, through my kneecaps, and concentrated into my femur bones. They gave me anything from codeine to synthesized heroin and injectable Demerol, which is pretty hard for a young person to be dealing with, and it really made me sick. By the time I was 13, I was so messed up from the drugs they were giving me. It was time for a change, that's for sure. They actually put me through quite a brutal process. They paralyzed me from the waist down, where I wasn't able to walk for 12 months. They also went in and removed all the flesh from my kneecap up to my hip bone, cut the bone in half and allowed them to untwist. Placed a metal plate and 6 screws in both my legs and kind of hope for the best. I suffer from chronic pain as a result of that operation. Unfortunately, it didn't quite go the way that they had hoped. They cracked my right kneecap. Unfortunately, because I was so high on opiates, I wasn't able to hold down any food, and so the medicine that made my cartilage soft during the process of pushing the curve through my kneecap didn't work, and my kneecap cracked in several places and looks kind of like an interesting spider web. If you get a look at the actual x-ray, it's quite interesting. But that's the reason why I got into medical marijuana, is because I was really, really sick from using all the opiates. And like I said, it's really hard on your joints, creates not only an emotional addiction, but as well as a physical addiction. So then you're also in pain not only from what you're experiencing, but you're then also in pain from the lack of drugs or wanting a certain drug that is really just not good for you. Medical marijuana has made a huge difference in my life. Before I switched over, I was unable to work, wasn't able to really get out of bed. Every day was just kind of boring, like a haze, because I'd spent my entire life being a heroin addict through prescription, which is really sad. And now I pursue this career and to help people to not have them go where I went. It's a really hard path when you get to the point where you're so messed up from the pills, you don't know what you're in pain from. The lack of pills, your legs, just life. Yeah, and a lot of people find themselves there, and I think that's why we really need to push this medical marijuana movement forward. People need to be liberated. I'm able to work now. I drive. I work 7 days a week. I own a medical marijuana dispensary. I own a magazine called 12highchicks.com. I also have a comic book called Weed Woman that's done by an Australian illustrator. Yeah. And that's what pot's done for my life. It's brought me from on the couch to where I am right now. And that's amazing right there in itself, that it can take someone from the bottom of nowhere to, like, I feel like I'm living my dream right now. I'm talking to all you guys. This is awesome. We get to go on this amazing flight out here to come meet all of you. I mean, this is great. Yeah, more adventures. And I guess the reason why I'm talking to you now is in hopes that if you need any of these medical products, that you don't need to necessarily just hope for it. You can make it yourselves for the time being until your government gets their head wrapped around this whole medical marijuana thing, and it is coming. I mean, your prime minister was a little bit crazy enough to say, you mean it's not already legal? I just thought, and then he said that we were Canada or something, which was even more ridiculous. Yeah, so we have medical marijuana and Canada rocks or something, and I was like, wow, they're really backwards up there.
No, that's just their prime minister.
That's just your prime minister. Okay, that's fair. If it's just one Australian that's a little backwards, then we can live with that, I guess. A lot of people in Canada, we have, well, if you look behind you guys, there's a couple of cartoons up there, and there's 2 sitting side by side holding hands called PBP, and that stands for the Profits Before People. And that's the reason why I started my dispensary. So a lot of people were going out and gouging patients, people that were sick, people that were not in a position to buy extra medicine to take care of the things that are wrong with them. And so we have a program that allows people that don't have any money to get a sponsor and their medicine sent to them every month without question. Happy Cat sticker gets slapped on, and they're happy, they're healthy, and our sponsor feels good for helping other people. The Profits Before People, it's a real thing in Canada, and I suspect that here it is also a real thing. They're literally turning a product that you could make yourself in your own home, so for $2, and they're charging you $30 for that same product. which is completely and utterly unnecessary, especially when some of us are actually dying or are really sick. Not that long ago, I was actually on vacation. I told my friend Ed, and I'm like, I need a vacation. I'm too sick. I'm working too hard. No, I was actually really sick, and I wasn't aware. I went on this 3-week adventure, ended up in Fiji, came to Australia, went to New Zealand, and went home. But during that trip, I was tired. I couldn't seem to get untired. 3 weeks in, or 2 weeks in, that's right, I had finally said to Ed, something is wrong with me. I'm too tired. I can't function. Went to a couple doctors. They all said, go home, go home. And 11 days after I got home, I had an emergency bone marrow transplant on my face. And to be fair, the only thing that would got me through that was marijuana. That's when I actually got my first prescription of Sesame, because I was unable to actually smoke, because of course, they had to break my jaw to give me the bone marrow transplant to save my life. It was really hard on me, because I thought, I'm just working too hard. No, I actually pushed myself to the limits where I was quite ill, and without medical marijuana, I definitely would not have made it through that, absolutely. It was quite an amazing journey. During that time, I experienced some really interesting pain that I've never had before. There were some of the tinctures I had never bothered trying before. Phoenix Tears was one of them. That really helped a lot. That's something I'm not very familiar with making, but I do know that it's made with butane butter and a glycerin base. And it comes in a syringe kind of plunger-looking type thing back at home, and I know there's a way to make it, and I'm sure we could put it on our page once I find someone that can do it. We have everything from the capsules on our page on how to make it, to cookies, to hash. It's all there for you to be able to just look at it and use it at your discretion. Don't rely on PVPs to take care of you, because they're really not going to. They're looking out for themselves and not for you guys. We find a lot of these people are definitely in politics. It's kind of sad, actually. I joined politics and thought, oh, I'm going to be meeting all these great people, and there's a few of them there that are actually looking out just for number one, and that's why they joined, as to protect their own assets and, you know, their own ventures into the world. I find a lot of them are all interconnected with the MMPR program that's happening in Canada right now. I don't know if you guys are aware of what's happening in Canada, but we just had an MMAR program, which allowed people to be able to grow pot in their own homes, grow it in their barn, have whatever limit their doctor set. And then these new politicians and new people came in and said, we don't like that. We want you to have 150 grams per month regardless of what's wrong with you. And you're no longer allowed to grow in your own homes, and you're going to have to buy it from these licensed producers. So pot just went from, say, $6 a gram, which is what it's available for on my webpage, to $27 a gram. And that's where the government wants us to go with medical marijuana. We want to apparently gouge people on a large scale now, which is really, really sad. And as a dispensary owner, I've kind of got out of my way to ensure that we're not gouging people. We don't even have a storefront because the government made it illegal to have storefront. They also made it illegal to advertise or to have over a certain amount of patients or to be within a certain proximity of another dispensary. They've made it really hard for us, and somehow we're still there, which is quite amazing. But yeah, these new PVPs that are coming out and opening up these LPs are sending out bad weed as well. They're sending out pot that's gone moldy. It's been radiated, it's been ground up with the stems and seeds and everything else to a little nice, expensive package that they send to you via mail. We also send by mail, which is totally illegal. Yet it's the only platform that the government accepts. We're running on the old system, the MMAR program. We're currently fighting the government right now. We put $100,000 towards the government to fight the new regulations, which 24 hours after we put up $100,000 to fight them with a lawyer, they said, oh, look at that. We're going to spend $250,000 to give you 4 fancy lawyers to fight against. So they're really, really wanting to gouge us, and the PVPs might actually win in Canada. But at 3 o'clock, I'll be doing a presentation on Weed Women, and hopefully we can stop them here before it starts, which would be really great. Because let's face it, it's not about them, it's about us, and it's about us having good quality lives. And then medical marijuana is definitely a good key to getting or to having quality in your life. You know, it's also great for just relaxing. A lot of people go, oh, I'm just a recreational user. But yet they go home after a stressful day and smoke a joint and relax, which is, to me, quite medical. And sometimes the line kind of crosses a little bit which is quite interesting to see. But I think that's my time up, isn't it? Do we have any questions, guys? No questions? Oh, no, not one. There we go, woohoo! Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
And we got one gentleman here as well. 1 second.
Sorry, do you use lectin? Is it lectin, E-L-E-C-H-I-N, soy and sunflower?
Can you just say that a little louder, sorry?
Close to the microphone.
Sorry, it's lectin or lectin, I'm not sure.
Lecithin.
Lecithin. Do you use lecithin?
For what?
It's supposed to enhance the effects of marijuana.
I've never personally used it, no. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, so...
It's a soy extract.
Interesting. No, I've never used it myself. I'm sure people must use it if you guys know about it, right? Oh, Soylent Greens. Oh, yeah, dude, we sell those. Okay, yeah, we have those. Yeah, a lot of people like those, especially the older generation. I seem to have more patients, say 55 to 75, that purchase those. I don't really have any young people that are into those, though. Maybe the older guys just know what they're doing? I don't know. That's a good question.
Maybe they saw the movie.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, actually, an older gentleman, he actually has these crazy dreadlocks and this like crazy Jamaican kind of headband. He makes them for us, and he always comes in like every couple of months, no shoes, off the fair, and he's like, "Hey guys, I got your action." Yeah, he comes in with these giant bags of Soylent Greens. He's pretty cool. I like him. Was any more questions? Are we good? One more. Oh, you mean cannabis products? No. They would have definitely arrested me at the border if that had been the case, for sure. I had a hard enough time bringing this mask in. Yeah.
The Three Happy Cats export.
We are a Canadian-only dispensary. But that's what our license allows us to do, so yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I hope I just kind of rambled on. I hope that was all right.
No, beautiful.